Welcome to Previously on X-Men.
The podcast that looks back on X-Men comics, movies, shows, characters, and more. You can find more about this show and others like it at our network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. Other shows on the network include Three Nice Things, where we force ourselves to say three nice things about a movie with a bad and often earned reputation. There's Is It Classic, Does It Rock, where we pick a band or artist and go through their discography, album by album, track by track. And then there's Nostalgia Me This, a trip through nostalgic pop culture. Share your thoughts on this and upcoming episodes by following us on Facebook and Twitter at Previously on X. Please rate, subscribe, and share the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. I'm Eric Nichols, known online as duskvstweak, and with me is my co-host, Hilary Gunning.
Hello.
Today, we have an interview with Fred Van Lente, specifically about his work on X-Men Noir and Wolverine First Class. Fred Van Lente is a longtime comic book writer, having worked on multiple Marvel Universe proper stories, but he's also dipped his toes into the X-Men universe. He wrote Wolverine First Class, I believe it was the first 12 issues, which was released in May 2008. And Wolverine First Class could technically be considered a spin-off of the X-Men First Class comic book series, which came out in September 2006. It would be so alongside with Weapon X First Class. And X-Men Noir was released in February 2009. It was part of the Marvel Noir line, which included different characters receiving the Noir treatment, such as Spider-Man Noir, who would go on to feature in video games and animated Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie.
It's fun to keep saying noir.
Noir. X-Men Noir received a sequel miniseries titled X-Men Noir, The Mark of Cain, in February 2010. I was able to interview Fred Van Lente over on the podcast, the All the Books Show, that I co-host. It was during our Spider-Man Spotlight week. It was the second part of that week, so you can find
an entire week
where
you guys
week.
Talked about Spider-Man.
3 episodes.
It is not a comic book podcast.
It's not a comic book podcast, but we have our vanity projects over there. You can find those episodes starting with episode 202 at soundcloud.com, All the Books, or find the All the Books Show on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. That's where he talked about his time writing on Spider-Man and other Marvel titles as well. Basically, I asked Van Lente about his time writing Wolverine First Class, how he got the job, and the tone he went for. And I talk about the origins of X-Men Noir, what it was like transferring those characters in that setting. Spoiler warning? Maybe not spoiler warning. What's
not spoiler,
Surgeon General's warning?
Everybody calm down.
Fred Van Lente, he actually reveals that he's not the biggest fan of the X-Men.
Yeah. This being an X-Men podcast, we might just let you know ahead of time. Yep. Everybody can take a seat.
Yep.
Here's the thing. Now, we can talk about this more after, but just since we're bringing it up, I feel like when he says he doesn't like the X-Men, I don't think it really means what it sounds like. I think he has an appreciation, but it's not the thing that he likes.
Right.
Although he does, I'm pretty sure he uses the word hate.
Yeah, well, for certain, you'll hear it in the interview, but basically it sounds like he was just not a fan of them at all, but he still came in, and I think if you read X-Men Noir or Wolverine First Class, he still knows his stuff.
Yeah.
So here is Fred Van Lente talking about his time writing Wolverine First Class and X-Men Noir.
The first one I want to talk about is Wolverine First Class. What was the challenge, maybe specifically for you, writing an all-ages story? Because Wolverine the First Class felt very much like an all-ages story, but it's Wolverine who's got knives coming out of his hands. How do you kind of it's not very much, it's not necessarily a kid's book, but how do you kind of tone down Wolverine for that type of story?
It definitely was supposed to be the Wolverine kids book, and when they said, we want you to write a Wolverine kids book, I was like, you're insane.
Right.
But then that's obviously why you came to me. I always get the suicide missions.
Right.
Basically, I can't remember who was my idea or the editor's idea to make it essentially a Kitty Pryde Wolverine team book.
Right.
But I figured out fairly early on that if the story was from Kitty's point of view, from a 13-year-old girl's, or 14 or however old she was at that point in the Claremont, if it's from her point of view, then it's all going to be filtered through sort of a kid sensibility, and it worked out really well. Like every convention, I have like a 20-something woman come up to me and say, with a stack of Wolverine First Class, I love this book when I was a kid. I feel so old. Anyway.
Is it really that? Is it really that old? Because I remember when it was coming out monthly, and that doesn't seem too long to me either.
Right, because that was 11 years ago.
Oh wow, boy.
Yeah.
You're writing a character. You're writing Wolverine. You're writing Kitty Pryde. These are very fan favorite characters. But you're also writing on kind of hollowed ground in terms of the Claremont years.
Right.
And so is that stressful, or as a writer, is that just another sandbox for you to work in?
No, because to be blunt, I've always hated the X-Men, like deeply,
whoa.
like intensely.
Okay.
So I had no veneration for it whatsoever. So it made it so I didn't feel any need to respect it beyond, just from a professional standpoint. Like I wasn't gonna like trash anything.
Right.
But I really hated Wolverine as a character.
Really?
But it wasn't until it was really through the process of writing Wolverine First Class and sort of walking in his shoes, which you kind of have to do to write him, that really gave me an appreciation for him.
Okay.
Still don't think that I would volunteer to write Wolverine ever again.
Right.
But I lost my, I guess I sort of figured him out once I realized, he's basically a werewolf. Like that's sort of how I thought about it.
You turned him into a werewolf at one point.
I literally ended up turning him into a werewolf.
Yeah.
So, or maybe it was Kitty Pryde I turned into a werewolf. I don't remember. Anyway.
No, yeah, Wolverine gets turned into a werewolf, and Jack Russell, the werewolf by night, has to show up and help Kitty.
That's right. I love Werewolf by Night.
Okay.
Yeah. So I never liked the X-Men, and if I ever liked the X-Men, it was during the Lee Kirby run, which I read reprints of all the time.
Sure.
I liked them in their blue hoods and
their Silver Age.
Yeah, spandex. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I gotta ask, what is it about Wolverine that you hated? What is it about Wolverine that hasn't struck with you?
He just seems like a short, angry guy with knives. He just seems really aggro. Like I feel like I knew him in high school and didn't like him very much, but. Despite all of the samurai posturing and all that sort of stuff they added onto the character, which I never really was really into.
Okay.
But then if you've got to write a character, if you're not a crappy writer, if you take your job seriously, you sympathize with the character because you have to find things that are sympathetic about it. Otherwise, you would just tear your hair out.
Sure. So then were editors did you have to deal with editors saying like this character didn't know this character at this point? Was that more of an editor issue then?
No, I sat down and read the whole run. Still didn't really care. I could see how people like it. Mm-hmm. I didn't read every issue of X-Men. The period of the X-Men we were doing was literally Kitty was introduced.
It was basically like right after Dark Phoenix, Days of Future Past kind of X-Men.
Right. Yeah, she was introduced right after Dark Phoenix.
Right.
So it was the post Dark Phoenix X-Men, and we were, and so Marvel, not without reason, wants people to think everything is quote unquote mattering, and stories being like, in continuity. So the our stories all take place like between the raindrops of the Claremont.
Right. Sure.
Burn X-Men run. So my last issue on Wolverine First Class was this story about Kitty being with Cyclops and not Wolverine, which was one of my favorites.
Okay, yeah. I definitely tell that you had a respect for Cyclops in that issue.
Yeah, and that was literally that took place. There was this whole subplot in the Claremont X-Men about Magneto taking over essentially Cthulhu's home. Mm-hmm. in the X-Men fight him there. I think it's X-Men 150, Uncanny 150, and then sort of is never really explained how they got off the island. So I just did a story that sort of was like that.
Sure.
On the island.
Well, then you tricked me because the issues that are specifically about Wolverine and Sabretooth, I thought were very, very well done and had kind of...
Yeah, I really liked that story.
They both stories that you did with Sabretooth in them felt very much like that classic Wolverine-Sabretooth antagonistic relationship that maybe has been lost over the years.
Yeah, like the whole idea of him, like, Well, wait, are you talking about the weapon? Oh, did I?
You have one where Sabretooth visits Wolverine on his birthday. They're all throwing him a party, and that's a very classic type of story for Wolverine. And then you have one where Wolverine is trained by Shang-Chi. And then
that's right. They made me do that story because they had to renew the Shang-Chi trademark, and he had not been on. But literally, that entire issue exists solely so we could have a cover with Shang-Chi on it, and it's saying
Okay.
Shang-Chi in this issue,
Sure.
and then give that to the patent office, and then they're like, okay, you are maintained trademark.
Okay.
Or renewed.
Right.
So every 7 years, like a siren goes off in the Marvel offices, and they're like, shit, we got to renew Shang-Chi.
That's
in
hilarious.
2019, we will start producing a movie about him.
Right. Sure.
Can't lose the rights.
Okay. Well then, it's interesting that you admitted to not liking X-Men because you have another X-Men title as well, X-Men Noir.
So funny.
And was this an assigned job, or was this one that because Marvel was doing an entire like noir line? So do they assign this to you, or do you come in with a noir pitch?
Okay, so this is a little complicated. So Nate Cosby, the aforementioned editor, and the artist, I met this artist, Dennis Calero, and we became pals at a convention, and we really wanted to work together. And so in ye olden days at Marvel, along with Human Torch and Submariner, their third most popular hero was the Angel.
Right, yeah.
Who was sort of essentially a kind of a Batman ripoff, except he didn't wear a mask and he was like a man about town. Like, it was almost like the Thin Man put on a costume and went out and beat up criminals. And so we were trying to interest Marvel in something called Marvel Mystery Comics, and having Angel star in that, and have him like solve like superhero mysteries. And that was a project that just went through so many like iterations and like hemming and hawing for Marvel about whether it would sell. And finally they were like, well, we're going to do a book called Spider-Man Noir. Mm-hmm. What if you took this, and can you take Angel, since there's an Angel in the X-Men, can you do X-Men Noir? Okay. And we were like, okay. And so very early on, my editor had this idea, and he sort of like insisted on it, was that there wouldn't be any powers. Right. Like nobody was allowed to have superpowers. So they're not mutants, they're criminals, right? Mutants don't exist. Unlike Spider-Man Noir, where, he had a cool costume and powers, and Nicolas Cage got to play in the movie. Right, sure. So I got the shit out of this stick on that one, but that's okay. Yeah. But so yeah, and they both sold really well to the point where they ended up doing an entire noir line. Right. And then they did sequels of both. I think Spider-Man Noir got a sequel also. And yeah. Yeah, the X-Men sequel was Mark of Cain. It's Mark of Cain, yeah. Yes. That was, and Dennis and I did both, and Nate, we did all those books, and Nate Picos did an amazing job sort of trying to letter the comics as if they were kind of pulpy. So I'm really happy with the way those books turned out, and people seem to dig them. Well, then, I mean, I read these a while ago as well, but was there a challenge bringing certain characters into the noir, or I mean, as you said, maybe it wasn't. I mean, because you just are taking like the tropes of one genre and applying them to another. You know, it ended up being very like, Unis the Untouchable. So he just sounds like a gangster. It sure does, yeah. Remy LeBeau with the cards make him a gambler. So it ended up being pretty natural. Multiple writers have done that. Neil Gaiman did the Marvel 1602, taking characters and just reinterpreting them. Is that like a special type of creation where you have to take these established characters and change a lot about them, but also kind of keep them at their core? Yeah, I mean, I find that challenge super fun. Like I like, to me, this isn't true for everybody, but it definitely is for me. I see each sort of writing assignment as a puzzle to be solved, as sort of a challenge to unwrap. So I like the constriction of, or I can like the constriction of, people complain about continuity a lot. I like continuity in the sense that it gives characters instant backstories, it makes them real, that they had, that they, these people and these things have happened to them. What trips you up more with mainstream hero comics, like I was talking about before, is, you can't use the Hulk because he's dead and he's not Bruce Banner anymore, and now he's this, or blah 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 blah. And you're like, what? It hasn't even been announced yet. Right. Now I got to go back and redo the whole thing. So I always enjoyed taking, the noir thing was sort of similar to Marvel Adventures in the sense that you're taking these established characters and you can do what the hell you want with them. Again, because initially in the noir line, it's because nobody cared. at least in the upper echelon. Once it sold really well, then they really started caring.
Then they cared, yeah, and then they put it in the movie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. You've been very generous with your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Those were some fun answers I wasn't expecting.
Sure.
But that was really.
That's why you asked questions, right?
Yeah, I did enjoy both X-Men Noir and Wolverine First Class, and I only recently read your Punisher Punisher Deadpool series, but that cracked me up quite a bit at times.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a really good time doing that.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you again for doing this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And that was the interview.
There it is.
You've read these as well, right?
Yeah, I've read all of the First Class, and I've read a little bit of the Noir.
You haven't read the sequel, Mark of Cain.
No.
I read the sequel after the interview because I got out of comics for a while when I was in college because I couldn't afford them, and that was around this time that they were coming out. So I only just was like, oh, that's right, X-Men Noir had a sequel series, Mark of Cain. I was really kind of into what was happening with the Marvel Noir. I remember that being like announced and everything. And I remember the X-Men First Class series kind of starting because it happened before the movie.
Yeah, I remember that coming out. I read those early on.
Yeah. I enjoyed the sequel, Mark of Cain, quite a bit. He brought in Nightcrawler, Colossus, and Storm in this one. He does some things in there, and this is the stuff I like when you're doing New Universe stuff. Xavier has a torture device in it where to get a guy to talk, he puts him in a room that just has light, just like lamps on all the time.
Yeah.
And he calls it Project Wide Awake, which was a Sentinel program in the X-Men comics.
Oh,
but
that's cool.
it's doing
like a little reference.
Yeah. And so there's all that stuff. Mark Cain, it's kind of like a Maltese Falcon kind of story where instead of the Maltese Falcon, it's the Crystal of Cataract. Did I say that right?
I don't know. I haven't.
Juggernaut's crystal.
Oh, yeah.
Crystal of Sidorak. Crystal or gem, I can't remember which one. It's the gem of Sidorak. Crimson Gem of Sidorak. Sidorak, everybody! So that's what they're going after. Everybody's kind of going there. They have an airship in there, like the helicarrier, but it's blimps.
Zeppelin kind of situation?
Yeah. This is all in the sequel, Mark of Cain. Okay. So if you had only read X-Men Noir, definitely check out X-Men Noir, Mark of Cain. You liked First Class as well, right? The Wolverine stuff?
Yeah, I liked it quite a lot.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's just sort of like a standalone, fun romp kind of thing.
You like the X-Men, but similar to Van Lente, you don't have this like reverence towards the Claremont years either.
No, I don't. No.
So like if when other characters are like, hey, I'm popping up, it's the 70s, you didn't see me before, that to you that's like, okay.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Mostly it's like, who's that? What?
Yeah. Wolverine becomes...
I assume that's meaningful.
Wolverine becomes such a like a hockey dad.
He is the most like stereotypical Canadian guy in this. It's so funny.
And again, Hilary, part Canadian.
Yeah, so I know.
It was like she was reading about her own father.
Yes, he's very similar to Wolverine.
I know. I've never seen Wolverine so into hockey until First Class.
Yeah, that's the only time
But I mean,
I've
I guess
seen
if you're not a huge fan of like the character and you've received this assignment, you're just trying to find whatever hooks you might be able to
He's
latch.
Canadian. He probably likes hockey.
Yeah. I actually do kind of like when Wolverine plays up the Canadian heritage a little bit.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, I mean, people might just forget. So
well,
it's just
it's something to distinguish him. Like, if you're gonna work with his character, you either have like he's like an animal or like the Weapon X stuff.
Well, like
so
you said,
nice
a werewolf.
To have something that's a little more light. For his character.
Yeah, I liked how he wrote Kitty in this. Claremont used to write Kitty as like a genius. And like she's considered a genius. In
this. I thought she was really funny in this.
Yeah. I said it in the interview, but I did appreciate I mean, like you said, it's more one issue specifically, but the appearances of Sabretooth.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
And I kept thinking like, well, no, but none of the X-Men know about Sabretooth, but they don't in this either. Because Kitty's got she can't see Sabretooth at one point. It's all these like moments where she's either unconscious or blindfolded. I'm like, all right, I'm fine then. Yeah. As somebody who would care about that continuity, I'm like, nope, doesn't bother me here.
Still doesn't know.
Yeah. It's nice to read about certain characters at certain times where like the Wolverine Sabretooth thing is a little bit played out. We've had our answers. There's no more mystery to it. And the answers aren't as exciting as they seemed to be originally, so it's nice to kind of go back to that and play on the whole Sabretooth beating up Wolverine on his birthday kind of stuff.
What was the issue where they were on the island? They were like camping or something?
That was with Cyclops.
Yeah, with Cyclops.
Van Lente was talking. We talked about that. It's right. I think it's right after they defeated Magneto.
Yeah, that's
in
what
issue
I like
150.
to hear in the interview. Yeah. I like to hear that, like how you kind of like wedged that in.
Yeah, he's like they never explained how they got off the island.
Yeah, and so, it's just a nice little vignette.
it was nice to just see Cyclops not written as a jerk.
Yeah,
so he's
he's
kind
of like a full character.
Yeah. So we said that about that in the 90s show.
I know. It's like I'm starting to like Cyclops. I don't recognize myself anymore.
But X-Men Noir, it kind of goes in that thing of where I've talked about why I don't mind changes in the movies and everything. Just take characters, figure out what's the core of them, and put them in completely different settings. So
for Noir?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
well, that's what's nice about pulling characters out of a situation, putting them in something so different, they're not even mutants anymore, is that you really have to isolate what makes them who they are and explore that in different ways. Sure. And I didn't really get the impression that they were really doing much of that.
Noir might irk some X-Men fans a little bit by the fact that the X-Men are criminal.
Yeah.
So that mutants are instead of mutants, they're like a new breed of sociopath. They're now going to be more intelligent and be more prone to criminal activity than your normal average criminal. So Xavier's school, instead of training superheroes,
it's training these sociopaths.
It's training criminals. So characters are grifters and card sharks and hitmen and all that stuff. A lot of characters are shown in a lot of negative light in this.
Yeah.
And, fitting of a noir setting, there's not much light in even the hero characters. But I think Mark Kane kind of carries that a little bit. Once you realize, Xavier's a bad guy and then it's easier to follow along in Mark Kane because now you're he's this bad guy, but you know who the heroes are.
Right.
Now. So the lines are a little bit clearer, even though it's still...
So here's what I think then about Noir. And it makes sense with what Van Lente was saying in the interview about not being a huge X-Men fan.
Right.
It seems more to me like he was using the X-Men for the story rather than using the story for the X-Men.
Probably, yeah. He's probably would be more into I'm going to tell this noir tale. Now I got to use the X-Men.
And then they're just sort of they're just plopped in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you're going to use the X-Men, then use it as a vehicle to really explore them. I just think it's a missed opportunity.
Okay. So that was X-Men Noir and X-Men or Wolverine First Class interview with Fred Van Lente. So that's the episode for this week. I'm duskvstweak everywhere online, apart from other shows on the Radio Meanwhile Network. I'm the co-host of the podcast, The All the Book Show. Thank you to Prophetic Music for our theme music. I say theme music and then music. Because his name is Music. Because he's thank you, Prophetic Music, but for our theme music. Theme song. There you go. Join us next.
Edited.
Oh. Join us next episode as we talk about X-Men: The Last Stand.
That's a movie.
That's part of our movie series. So that's the third movie, the last of the original trilogy. And then
now is this the one we're gonna fight about? Because I thought we were gonna fight about 2.
No, we're not gonna fight about this one. We might fight about Origins.
Did we fight about 2?
A little.
No, 2 is the one that you like and I thought was just fine.
Yeah, I was definitely more in the trenches than you were.
That's what it is.
Yes,
okay.
No, Last Stand.
So Last Stand, we both agree, is not great.
It's not great, but spoiler warning, I've learned to forgive. So it's how it is. I don't know when we're going to start arguing. I know we're going to argue about Apocalypse.
Oh, we're definitely going to argue about Apocalypse.
I think we're
going to argue... Do you want to just argue about Apocalypse right now?
I think we're going to argue about X-Men Origins, Wolverine.
Yes.
But I think
the other way.
Yeah. And we might argue in weird ways over Days of Future Past.
I think so. Yeah, I think we will.
But maybe because Days of Future Past has more in common with X-Men 2 than First Class.
Well, I don't know.
We'll see. That's the sizzle.
That's a little teaser we just did.
But we're talking about the X-Men Last Stand, and then I can't remember the titles. It's Enter Magneto and...
Oh, we're doing the
X-Men. We're back to the 2 episodes of the 90s animated series. Yeah. So I believe that's Enter Magneto
and something else.
Deadly Reunions.
Oh, yeah.
It's the one where Magneto fights them in the chemical plant and Sabretooth is at the mansion.
Spoiler alert.
Well, that's what happens. That's just the plot. Those 2 episodes, and then we'll be back to a character spotlight or some
sort of spotlight.
Again, you can find more about this show and others like it at the network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Previously on X.
And comment and stuff.
Yeah. And please rate, subscribe, and share the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. Noir.
Noir.
There we go.
We should be saying Noir.